At one point, cafe racers were everywhere. Brown leather seats, low clip-on handlebars, that little hump in the back that made every bike look fast even while parked. If you walked into a custom shop around 2012 or 2013, this was the style. Doesn't matter if it was an old Honda, a Yamaha, or something that really shouldn't have been modified at all, someone was turning it into a cafe racer. For a while, cafe racers weren't just a look, they were a statement. They represented rebellion, simplicity, and a return to motorcycling before electronics and ride modes took over. But today, you barely see new cafe racer builds getting attention. So what happened? Did cafe racers die, or did we just get tired of seeing the same bike over and over again? To understand that, you have to go back to where cafe racers actually came from. The original cafe racers were born in Britain during the late 1950s and early 1960s. Young riders would gather at roadside cafes and race from one cafe to another, pushing their bikes as fast as possible on public roads. The goal was simple: hit 100 miles per hour before the song on the jukebox ended. To do that, they stripped their bikes down. Anything that didn't make the bike faster came off. Lower clip-on handlebars for a more aggressive riding position, rear-set foot pegs to tuck in tighter, minimal bodywork, minimal weight. These bikes weren't built for comfort or looks, they were built to win bragging rights. No two builds were exactly the same because each rider modified their bike based on what they had, what they could afford, and what actually worked. That's what made the original cafe racer culture special. It was raw, functional, and personal. Fast forward several decades, and that same idea got reborn, but in a very different way. In the early 2010s, a few things happened at the same time. Old Japanese motorcycles were cheap and everywhere, YouTube tutorials exploded, and social media suddenly gave people a place to show off their builds. Cafe racers were simple enough that almost anyone could attempt one. You didn't need a full fabrication shop, you didn't need deep mechanical knowledge, you needed a grinder, a seat, and a vision. Or at least someone else's vision to copy. Soon there was a formula: flat brown seat, clip-ons, short exhaust, LED strip tail light hidden under the seat, and just like that, almost every cafe racer started looking the same. At first, people loved it. It felt clean, it felt different from big cruisers and plastic sport bikes. It felt artistic. Cafe racers became the symbol of real motorcycling for a new generation. But that popularity came with a cost. As more people jumped on the trend, the builds became less personal and more predictable. Bikes were being modified for photos instead of riding. Clip-on handlebars were installed without thinking about comfort or control. Suspension was ignored entirely. Brakes were rarely upgraded. Some bikes looked fast but were miserable to ride for more than 15 minutes. And slowly, riders started to notice. The cafe racer scene wasn't dying because it was bad. It was dying because it became lazy. People weren't building cafe racers to solve problems anymore. They were building them to fit an aesthetic. The same parts kept getting reused, the same seat shape, the same stance. Once you've seen 100 cafe racers that all look identical, the magic fades. Social media made this worse. When everyone is chasing likes, originality becomes risky. So instead of experimenting, builders played it safe, and cafe racers went from rebellious to mainstream almost overnight. Another issue was functionality. The original cafe racers were uncomfortable by design, but they were still purpose-built. Many modern builds sacrificed ride quality without gaining performance. Bad ergonomics, poor handling, hard tails that punished your spine. For riders who actually wanted to ride, the novelty wore off fast. Eventually, people started asking a different question. Not, does it look cool, but do I actually enjoy riding this? That shift changed everything. Cafe racers didn't disappear, but attention moved on. Performance baggers started gaining respect. OEM plus builds became more popular. Resto mods that blended old style with modern reliability took over. Customization became more subtle. Instead of screaming for attention, bikes started whispering confidence. The cafe racer wasn't dead, the trend was. The good builds survived. Well-engineered cafe racers, ones with proper suspension, brakes, and thoughtful design, are still admired today. But the era of buying an old bike, cutting the frame, bolting on parts, and calling it a build is mostly over. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. Cafe racers played an important role. They reminded people that motorcycles don't have to come straight from the factory to mean something. They brought new riders into the scene. They made customization accessible. But like any trend, once everyone does it, it stops feeling special. Today, building a cafe racer requires more than copying a look. It requires understanding why the style existed in the first place. Speed, simplicity, purpose. And that brings us to the real question. Are cafe racers dead? Or did we just grow up? Because maybe the truest cafe racer isn't about brown leather seats or clip-ons. Maybe it's about building a bike that feels right to you, even if nobody else is watching. If you've owned a cafe racer or still ride one today, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're thinking about building one, ask yourself one thing first. Are you building it for the camera or for the ride?